For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to Talking Point on Stratnewsglobal. Good evening. I am Surya Gangadharan, filling in for your host Amitabh Revi, who is away on assignment. This evening, we are looking at the election result in the Netherlands, where a right-wing party, for the first time, has won the election with a clear lead. Geert Wilders, the far-right politician who heads the Party for Freedom, has won the election and is in all probability will become prime minister. But it's he has to do it in coalition with some other parties, and the question is what kind of compromises he will have to make. I have with me a former Indian ambassador to the Netherlands, Ambassador JS Mukul. He's joining us on Talking Point to give us an insight, a perspective into what's going on in the Netherlands. Ambassador Mukul, glad to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
Sir, I know it's about some years since you were last there in the Netherlands as ambassador, but I'm sure you've been tracking developments there for some time. What does the election of a man like Geert Wilders, what does it say about the public mood in the Netherlands?
Now, I think the first point to note is that while Mr. Geert Wilders and his Freedom Party, or the PVV, has been on the margins of the political scene in the Netherlands for many years, in fact, around two decades, it has for the first time become the leading party in these elections. And I think it shows a mood for change, a great amount of disappointment with the present system or the present dispensation. In fact, if you see the results, all the four coalition partners in the present government have lost a lot of ground in these elections. So that I think explains to some extent. But obviously, there are a lot of things his party stands for, which we could look at. And I think it's also a shift ideologically to the far right, because this is a far right party. Though the ruling dispensation was also a right of centrist right coalition, but this is a dispensation which is on the far right. So that again, I think, should be seen at the larger context of Europe. We can discuss that also. But I think what is in Hungary, you have Mr. Orban. In France, you have the Marine Le Pen's party, and in Italy, you have the ruling party of Meloni. So I think this is also a trend towards a general shift towards the right in some of these European states.
Mhm. Now, tell me, Mr. Wilders has won 37 seats in a 150-seat parliament. He has to form a government only with other parties. Does that suggest that toning down of some of his very anti-Islamic sentiments and that he's famous for, including Quran burning and so on, does it suggest he'll have to bring down his campaign platform a bit to accommodate his partners?
No, first of all, some of the parties have clearly said they will not have any truck with him. But there
Okay.
are others, including the party, the ruling party, the VVD, the Liberal Party, has kept the door open, so to say, and are willing to do business. But then there are also other parties, the newer NSC, the new Social Contract Party of Mr. Omzits, and the BBB, which is really a rightist agrarian party. So they are the ones who will be in the play in terms of discussions. Coming to your specific question, I think that is very clear. Even in the run up to the elections, during the last phase of the campaign, he had moderated his stance to get a wider appeal. He has toned down his rhetoric and he had moderated his stance. And in fact, he has clearly said that banning of the Quran and the mosques and the Islamic schools is not an immediate priority that has to be put. He used the word to be put in the fridge. I presume it means the freezer or the cold storage for some time, and to focus on some of the more important pressing priorities. So, yes, that is very clear. That is not going to be an immediate priority, though, as you rightly pointed out, it remains on the party platform.
So, if he is so willing to come down on his pet agenda, what does that speak of his anti-Islamism? Is it really genuine? Is it was it only intended to win him an election? Where does he actually stand on this?
Well, that only time will tell. But I think he also realized that he needed to tone down some of his very inflammatory rhetoric and stance in order to get a wider appeal. So, I mean, that's a very very obvious kind of thing. If you are perceived as being absolutely, the words used are radical, far right, flamboyant, and all kinds of things. In fact, there is also a description of him as the Dutch Donald Trump. And then some people have gone on to suggest that he's more right than Donald Trump. So, I mean,
Hmm.
all those things are there. But the fact of the matter is that he has a full platform. It's not just that is one important element of it, the anti-Islam which you referred to, but he has a lot of other things. For example, uh, he also advocates Netherlands getting out of the European Union, what is called
EU, yeah.
after the British Brexit, what is called the Nexit, the Netherlands getting out of it. But he has again been very very shrewd in himself recognizing that there will not be enough support for a Nexit in the Dutch populace at this time. But having said that, he may still push for a referendum. Who knows? So that is another plank. The immigration is another very major plank of his. The voice against immigrants. So that is there. In fact, last year, 2022, has seen 200 and I believe 220,000 asylum seekers have been given has been have been given entry into the Netherlands, and all those factors also are there. So it's the Islamic thing. It is the anti-immigration. It is also the kind of an anti EU, or the what do you call Eurosceptic. So all those factors are there, and then a lot of other things he stands for. We could go into
Mhm.
that if that is of
So,
interest.
so the Netherlands has traditionally had a very liberal approach towards asylum seekers.
Yes, generally it has been liberal, but in this election, it was not only he, but a large number of other parties. In fact, one of the reasons why the present Prime Minister Mark Rutte, resigned was on the asylum immigration related problem. So there were a
Mhm.
number of parties campaigning against immigration. It's just that he was the loudest, and he has been talking against immigration for the longest period of time.
Mhm. So, in terms of, say, the India Netherlands relationship, where would we be? I mean, does India has traditionally put its bets on France and Britain? Perhaps even Germany. Where does Netherlands figure in that ambit?
No, I don't think that's a fair comparison. Netherlands is a much smaller country, but our relationship with Netherlands has been exceedingly good. In fact, the present Prime Minister, under Prime Minister Rutte, who's been in power since 2010, that is ever since the present Indian government has been in power here from 2014, uh, and we have done extremely well. Netherlands is important for us both politically, economic and commercial relations wise, as also on from the technology side. In fact, there are a number of issues on which we cooperate. Netherlands is our fourth largest trading partner in the European Union. It is the fourth largest source of FDI into India globally. and Netherlands brings a lot of heft when it comes to a few niche areas like water, agriculture, healthcare, etc. For example, in 2021, in a summit, in a virtual summit between the two prime ministers, the Indian and Dutch prime ministers, our relationship was on water was made into we have a strategic partnership on water with Netherlands, which is very strong in all areas related to water. Similarly, on health, we cooperate very closely, and again on agriculture. In fact, I think we are setting up 25 centers of excellence with regard to technology and things like that in the field of agriculture. So Netherlands is very strong on technology, and trade and investment I've already pointed out, and the political relations. The interaction between the leaderships has been very intense, starting with the visit of the Dutch prime minister in 2015, and then our prime minister went there in 2017, and again Prime Minister Rutte came in 2018, and then so that has been plus the virtual summits and conversations. Then His Majesty was here, and our president was in the Netherlands. So a lot of high level contacts have happened, and the most recent, of course, was that India has invited Netherlands as a special guest for our G20 summit. Among the 8 countries that we chose as our special guests, Netherlands was one of them. So I think a very strong political, and I think over the years, I would say prime ministers have established a personal rapport. In fact, I recall during my time in the Netherlands in 2014, 2015 to 17, Prime Minister Rutte was one of the few heads of state and government who went to Paris for the Paris climate conference, where the International Solar Alliance was pioneered and was initiated by the then president of France and the Prime Minister of India. So I think the relationship, bilateral relationship, is extremely strong. And to link up with what is happening, I think the relationship stands on its own merit. There is a logic to this relationship, so I don't see any. I mean, that relationship will move forward, whichever is the government in the Netherlands.
I note that India has been signing these mobility and migration agreements with a number of countries, including France and Italy and Spain, I understand. How would a person like Geert Wilders, with his background, react to something like this? Is something on the cards at all in the first place?
So these are available for with most countries. I mean, we have proposed it, or they have proposed it. I don't think it will happen immediately, but there are elements of that which would be of interest to Mr. Gildas, particularly the fact that he talks of people going back. In fact, one of his platforms is that people who are convicted of crime should be deprived of the Dutch nationality and deported out. Uh, and also the fact that dual nationality should not be given to he is against dual nationality. But I think there's one more element which we need to recall here, that one of the things which has helped him in this election is a general discontent because because of the price, the cost of living, particularly
Mhm.
of housing and healthcare, has gone up so high that I think that is something which touches the common man. I mean, this rhetoric on other things is also important, but really what touches the daily lives is the high cost of living, and there has been a tremendous increase because of inflation, whether Ukraine, whether West Asia, supply chain disruption, whatever be the or the cumulative result of all this. But I think that is something that I think people where, as I said, to use an Indian term, an anti-incumbency seemed to have set in, and that is why all the four ruling coalition parties have had major setbacks in this election.
Mhm. Would you say that is the trend in many other parts of Europe where we've seen right wing parties come in? Italy, for instance?
Well, that is true. There is a lot of disaffection, obviously, and then an urge for change, which leads people to some of these. But I mean, I don't want to generalize it, because after all, in France and in Germany, while AFD in Germany and Marine Le Pen's party in France are important, but they have
Yeah.
not been able to make the breakthrough that we have seen. In that sense, it was a surprise. It was a surprise, as I see, not only for all the watchers and everyone from the opinion polls. The results were a surprise because apparently a large number of floating population of voters who had not made up their mind decided at the very last minute to come in. The other thing I would like to take this opportunity to point out about the Dutch system is that while it has a proportional system, and we
Mm.
always, from Indian perspective, we have the first past the post, winner takes all
Yeah.
system, and that's why we get these absolute majorities. In their system, you get these coalitions. In fact, any
Mhm.
party which gets 0.66% of the vote, of the total vote, is get one seat in parliament, and that's why you have this splintered thing. But
Yeah.
let's also point to a positive of this. This also works as a safety valve in their system. Now, Mr. Geert Wilders or anybody else for that matter will have to negotiate, and these negotiations, by experience has shown, go on for weeks and months before he
Mhm.
can stitch up a coalition platform. His party platform is known, which we have been
Yeah.
discussing, but he'll have to stitch up a coalition platform. A lot of compromises will be made. He's already made moderated some of his harsh rhetoric and things like that, but a lot of other compromises he'll have to make, depending on, of course, which party finally he decides to align with, because he would need, at least looking at the arithmetic, he would need at least two parties, perhaps even more.
Yeah.
Just like the present coalition is a coalition of four so parties. So he will need, and that those are tough negotiations where every party would demand whatever it has to ask.
So what you're basically telling me is that economic concerns have largely driven this result.
Economic concerns have been a very major factor, as I could understand. But of course, economic concerns would only indicate that there was a urge for a change, perhaps. But
Yeah.
why the shift to the right? That could also be influenced because of the immigration. A large number of parties, as I told you, fought this election against the immigration because of the sense that in a small country like the Netherlands, 220,000 asylum seekers have been admitted, and they're not all Muslims. Let's be very clear. They're also because of the Ukraine and other issues
Mhm.
coming through. So I think there was a sense, and his plank. If I can quote a sentence of his, if you can find it. Uh, he has said very interestingly. It's like it kind of resonates with what Donald Trump has said. It's kind of an
Mhm.
America first or make America great again kind of thing,
Mhm.
where he has said that we have to first look at the interest of the Dutch citizens. That is his priority, and that is what I think he has been talking about. So that is something that has really, I think, got to be factored in. So how it will pan out, of course, as I said, it will take weeks, if not months, for him to stitch up this coalition, which is not going to be easy at all. But that is where I think he's already working on moderating his positions, already talking that the populace will not accept Nexit as of now because of his Euroscepticism. And I will quote this, and I quote: Netherlands can't take it anymore. This was his campaign rhetoric. Netherlands can't take it anymore. We have to think about our own people first now.
Mhm.
Borders closed, zero asylum seekers. So this is the kind of thing, a kind of Netherlands first, and I think that resonated with the general large number of people who have been suffering because, as I said, there seems to be a shortage of many because of these asylum seekers, but also otherwise. I was reading somewhere they are short of 390,000 houses. I mean, again, in a country like that, so
Mhm.
housing is
Yeah.
an issue. Healthcare continues, costs of healthcare continue to be an issue. So those are the kind of factors, I think, which have, and I think it has surprised him also, because that was the initial
Yeah.
thing that he also
Yeah.
expressed. he was not expecting perhaps a result of this nature, because the opinion polls were slightly different, but
Yeah.
a large number of populace seem to have made up their mind at the very last minute. There was also a news report, very interesting. I don't know whether it has any bearing, saying that what happened in on the 7th of October, the terror attack in on of the Hamas on
Yeah.
Israel, also led to some hardening of
Some
maybe
hardening. Mhm.
positions.
Because I
But
was
I think
watching the news.
it's a combination of factors. You
Yeah.
can't
I
pure.
was watching the news a little while back about riots in, of all places, Ireland, against some place where immigrants were coming in and staying. So apparently, is there, do you discern a general anti-immigrant sentiment in Europe?
Yes, I think that is there. There are a lot of parties, especially the right wing parties. I mean, obviously the liberals and the left are more pro immigrants and pro asylum
Yeah, yeah.
seekers and things, but the right wing parties are certainly very strong on this. And there is, and the results are showing that there is an opinion in all these countries which is really anti immigrants, or is getting to be a bigger constituency, it appears. But as I said, the for me the Dutch system is a resilient system. It's a thing. So and there are these safety walls, or in the built into the system, which he will have to look. And I don't think I see. I mean, there will be obviously a lot of changes, but if his Gilders led coalition comes in, but I don't think it's going to be as dire or as thing as some of the alarmist as some of the news reports are making it out to be.
Has he ever been here in India?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. Also, you see, from 2004, he's been under a lot of threat. He's
I
been
see.
under a lot of threat. So he lives in a kind of a security
Alcatraz.
cordon. Yeah, he has a security cordon around him all the time. So that's why he's I think he's restricted. I was reading one of the interviews where he's supposed to have said that even my house windows have been blacked out because of security. I can't even see the sun or something like that. So I mean, yes. But also, I think I should like to point out that some of his election. What I'm reading is that some of his election, because of course they are in Dutch, you can't understand them. But some of he made a tremendous impression also as a campaigner. So
Mhm.
I don't know whether you call it charisma or what you call it. He came out exceedingly well. What is it called? His performance, his political performance in the election campaign was apparently very, very impressive. So that is also a factor which I guess played in his favor.
Any last word you see on how these negotiations going forward? It could even be that he fails to form a coalition, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Then that would then throw up a completely a new thing. And
Mhm.
then you see the one of the second he's at 37, as you pointed out, out of 150. The second largest is a coalition of Labour and Green Party. Now, Labour and
I
Green
see.
have clearly said they have nothing to do with it. They're at 25. The
Yeah.
ruling party, the VVD of Prime Minister Rutte, but now that he
Okay.
is stepping down, there is a lady, Madam Dillon, is taking over
Mhm.
this party. They are at 24. So this arithmetic will have to be worked out. So as I said, there are a lot of splinter groups. Of course, it makes it very difficult. The larger the number of coalition partners, the more difficult it becomes. But Netherlands has a history of these negotiations going on for months, literally, before a coalition government has been sort of established or has been sworn in.
So, from
So
what I can sense, from what you're telling me, it's a sticky period ahead for Mr. Geert Wilders,
yes.
and it could well be that negotiations will be tough. He may have to compromise on his agendas, on his many agendas, and for all you know, he may even end up seeing another election in the Netherlands. Is that possible?
Well, everything is possible, but I think at the moment we would say he's the front runner, and with his moderation of some of his extreme policies and his compromises, it looks like there are enough parties who are willing to sort of at least engage with him. Whether he's able to stitch together the coalition, I guess it's not for us to speculate, but time will show. But that's the way it is at the moment. I think, yes, while at one stage it is celebration time for Mr. Geert Wilders, having first time got it, but at another level, the challenge is only starting now.
Absolutely. On that note, Ambassador Mukul, thank you for this insight and perspective on the Dutch elections. It's a little far away from India, perhaps not very well noticed. Nevertheless, important enough for us, as you underscored. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you.
And for those of you who joined us on this edition of Talking Point, thank you for coming to our channel. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. Thank you very much. Good night.